Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another coffee shop Wi-Fi episode. It's minus 4 degrees Celsius here in Etobicoke, Canada. And I'm giving this talk in my car. So, I wanted to speak about something that has come to my attention. I'm usually a person who I tend to, just my interaction with technology is like, just a few personal things and just this Mr. Within talk. I don't roam social media that much. Like I do search for YouTube lectures and whatnot. But anyways, this YouTube Shorts thing, which they've made it kind of like TikTok, I was seeing videos on there. And I was shocked to see how many videos there are on masculinity. Okay. And I thought, why not? Let's have the Mr. Within take on this. So, the situation of our lives is that behaviors were. There you go, guys. You can even hear the shorts I was watching. Okay, here. Let me find a song. Let's go, Moon, Monk by the Sea. If by any chance you are the ambient artist Monk by the Sea, I will be your best friend. You know, I've listened to this song so many times. All right. So let's get into this. First, it makes sense. My approach in trying to think about things, trying to give a solution to problems, is to try to look at the problem as many angles as I can, through as many angles as I can, and then the best decision becomes like the judgment, right? We all know that the human brain doesn't have the processing power of like super intelligent advanced computers. Okay, so our brain is here to articulate not the whole cosmos, but to articulate a certain percentage or that which is required for our lives. Okay, now I was thinking about this whole thing about, of course, there's a history about feminism. There's all the wars, for example, men have fought, There's ideas on matriarchal systems and patriarchal systems. We are living in a patriarchal system, but it is not a sort of isolated, I guess, patriarchal system. It's our species requires two components to continue, and so I think it's a sort of indirect kind of common sense that if men and women can't procreate, the species will, it's like a big error. It's a very difficult position. There's different types. I could say, I guess, the masculine force. I mean, some people say that there's masculine energy, feminine energy in there. My own observations of these energies are just determinism. For me, when I look at what masculine action is in some sense action where the certainty is a responsibility, is a duty. All right? It's rather intensity. It's as if this species of ours was so intelligent that it was preparing for all levels. Okay? Now, something I wanted to say about masculinity, I just remembered before I before I started the talk, was just this idea that I was thinking that the context of the concepts that we hold as creatures are changing. And what this means is that what it meant to be a warrior back in the day is different than what it means to be a warrior now. Right? Not the internal workings per se, the fearlessness is there, but when it comes to openness of savageness, right? Like right now in today's society, right? Human beings, of course, we need a spectrum of different strengths, different classes. Just like video games, you have different classes of people. We need different classes of human beings to advance the civilization, right? When we go back in time, we begin to see, what do we see? We see like the biggest gorilla. The strength was the determinant of status, okay? But nowadays, I mean, sure, strength is still important. I mean, whoever has the bigger club, I mean, people respect that person. Why? Because they don't want to get hit. There's so much fake respect going on in this world that if for 1 second everybody was honest, I think a lot of powerful people will stop existing. But anyways, to keep going with this, so we look at evolution. We look at the behavior of a creature on a planet. Not only is the creature changing, the planet is changing, the whole system is changing, right? So what we notice is that the brain works on pattern recognition. And what's very fascinating is that women haven't all become jacked up muscular men. Like this this might be a silly thing to say, like it may sound silly, but to me, if strength was the truest value, it would make sense that the men and the women would all seek strength, right? But the strength, like the outer strength, it's kind of like different. It's as if, for example, women have greater inner strength, I find, and men have greater outer strength. A woman has the greater inner strength in the sense that a woman goes through the process of childbirth, and this is, when I was looking into Carl Jung's major archetypes, there's something called the anima and the animus, which means if you're a man, you need to confront the anima, and if you're a woman, you need to confront the animus. And what it means is the opposite of your archetype, but it means internally. It doesn't mean externally you have to become the opposite of your archetype. The nature of the mind is, just like we wear clothing and we outgrow it, similarly, we outgrow the ideas we have of ourselves. Now, sometimes in life, our direct experiences, give us the privilege and snap us out and wake us up. We learn from the first mistake. But sometimes in life, the mistake keeps happening and you don't learn from it. And the person has a determination in their own world. When I started giving these talks, my determination was just from my own world. Still to this day, it's in my own world. I am speaking to the species. My intent is for these talks to be heard by the universal sector, not just beings on Earth. Like if aliens, land in the future, sure, subscribe to the channel. So what I'm trying to get to is that archetypes are shifting. They're shifting because the environment is shifting, and the environment is changing from a physical place to a non-physical place. So my pointer on what has happened to masculinity in these modern age, and what is it that every generation looks at the next generation. It's like, look at these weak, poor children, like each generation, I don't know what it is. It's like when I look at my father had a stronger mental framework than I did. When I look at my grandfather had a stronger mental framework than all my uncles and father. You see, so the strength, this is what I realized. Back in the day, men did not connect duty in the outer realms to emotion in the inner realms. There was a disconnect. That means, like, if you were a lumberjack, you'd wake up and it didn't matter if you were, like you liked it or you disliked it, you just do the action, right? This is something they don't tell you. I wish someone like me was in my own life who could have said this to me earlier. to not be so convinced by my own certainty. You know, they tell people to be confident, but they don't tell people when not to be confident. There are moments in life where a person should look with a different eye. Do you know? Like there's moments in different situations I look at it differently. Like one moment I'm like, okay, what's the physical logistics of the setting? And then the second thing I'm like, okay, what are the thoughts motivating the motions in the environment? That means if physical beings are moving around me, what's causing them to move, right? And it tends to be their attention and where their attention is on. Right? Now, the difference between somebody who we consider to be, let's say, unstable or insane and somebody who's sane is that the person who's sane can discriminate between an inner event and an outer event. But those people who cannot discriminate between inner events and outer events, they can't tell apart that what is subjective and what is objectively real. And this has been a part of our species. It has been in the mind of our species, right? From the earliest times. Like, who was it? Somebody was saying that the Aztecs, the Mayans... Is anybody even listening to this live stream? Jesus. 8 years of giving talks and it's like barely one person. What is this? Whatever. Perhaps, we walk in the silence until it doesn't matter. We walk alone until it doesn't matter if we're alone or not, perhaps. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is that something I feel they called it red pill movement. I think it's inspired from the movie Matrix, right? So this whole red pill movement, you know what it is? It's just that times have changed and the savage intensity that man was conditioned when he was raised in the jungle is no longer there. What is going on is that civilization 1.0, I am encouraging civilization 2.0, but civilization 1.0 is trying to turn people into subjective entities because a subject can be way more instantaneously controlled than an object. Okay, so what is going on is that the world, what I feel is happening is that the global, I don't know why it's like this. I think it's stupid, but I shouldn't say it's stupid. I mean, 100% there's things I don't understand, but like, I don't know, when I've wondered about what is the world doing to itself, it seems like man was under nature's authorization. He stepped out of nature's authorization and began authorizing for himself his own reality. You know what's funny? Even if you're someone who believes in God, you cannot ignore the fact that you are creating your reality. Of course, the power of your creation of reality comes from God, let's say, if you're religious. But the creative ability is you. You see, sometimes I wonder why existence was a position, right? So I'll share something theologically here too. This is a recent observation of mine. I was thinking why, if Adam and Eve made the mistake, their descendants should be on earth. This is something I'm waiting for theologians to respond to me. Anyone who's a theologian, anybody who, different scriptures and whatnot, respond to me, answer this question that why, for the sin of two beings that were not us, the sin of the whole species, the sin is falling on the whole species. You see, it's as if it's not Adam and Eve that sinned. It's everything that looks like them that went on looking like them afterwards. Or it could be this idea that the sinful had children, so all the children are sinful. But I don't know. To me, there's something else. I don't know why, but I feel that the secret behind this reality is that you're a creature of attention, and attention contains itself. When I wonder about my identity, it's a container. It's a boundary. Just like nations created walls, we created walls around the psyche. And that was thanks to language. And all of these are necessary, you know. Sometimes a person can have this view in life like, why did this happen, you know, but at the same time, like, you know, the way nature works is that it brings forth what is needed. Like, you look at birds and there's seeds on the ground or worms in the soil, right? You look at everything and the world is here to accompany it. We look at the human being, and because we are behaving differently than the world, we feel the world is not accompanying us, so we feel it's lifeless. You see, I have this theory that the ancients were not people, they were winds. They were invisible winds. They were forces. The earliest beings on this planet were not physical entities. They were space. They were fighting over the space before there was matter in it. Who was fighting over space? Attention. Not from here, but attention. There's many types of attention. There's many ways your attention projects your reality. When it comes to masculinity and femininity, the thing about masculinity is the consistency in the upkeep of the responsibility. What it means is that out of this human species, think of it this way, two kinds of players, right? Like women and men. And so what it is it's attention. I have this feeling that a human being is actually attributeless, but once it selects, it chooses, it decides, its attention, action, and feeling are aligned, then, you know, the reality changes. You know, we're not the same kind of savage men who would pick up swords and shields and go to battle, right? So what it was a jungle, then we came into the concrete jungle, now we're going into the cyber jungle, right? So what it is that there was a phase in life where we had to be intensely physical creatures. Right now, the masculinity movement, the red pill movement, they're trying to preserve it. Okay? They're trying to preserve, just like religious people are trying to preserve religious teachings from thousands of years ago. Similarly, we're trying to do the same thing with different behaviors in different periods of time. Okay, and the thing about humanity is that there's constantly a flux, this change of new technologies and old technologies. Technologies are being lost, new technologies are coming in. Similarly, for human beings, the old men of the old world are leaving, the new men of the new world are entering. But the new men of the new world do not have the same cultural and experiential reality as the men of the old world. The men of the old world had a comfort with accepting how existence is. But in modern times, what has happened, and I figured out what this was, and it kind of breaks my heart to say it, but it's the generation of loving mothers. And excuse me, not loving, kind, or overprotective mothers. Okay? What that means is when the child is young, the mother's like, oh, did you trip? Are you okay? Oh, my good boy. Like all of this. But that's the time where the father should be pushing the kid around. So when the kid gets bullied, not hit the kid. I'm not saying domestic abuse, but I'm saying, like, if the father pushes the kid, then when the kid gets pushed in school, he's not going to freak out, right? I was privileged. I was kind of blessed because I had a twin brother, and me and my twin brother, before we went to school, we were fighting physically all the time. So when we went to school, we were like new playmates. But what I find is that nobody is the same person all the time, but everybody tries to be the same person all the time. Everybody tries to keep their attention on something, right? What it is that the species, everybody's like, what is meditation? But meditation is concentration, where your attention is. You know, for me, I have seen exceptional meditators. And you know where I've seen them? I've seen them in the nightclub. You know, and I've seen them with such incredible concentration, either on the dance floor or when it comes to, what do they call it, intrapersonal intelligence. Do you see, there is mastery, there is skill, we are a force, there is a context, there is a world, we are its response. And so whoever you are on this planet, man, woman, right? You're at some point, the species is going to get to a point where we're like, yo, is a subject a male or a female? Is the idea of a man male or female? Right? So when it comes to the abstraction of language, right, this is when we're pretty much civilizations like oh man, I forget the name, Tactartus? Pretty much the continental philosophers and the philosophers that realized language was limiting our world, or was the limits of our world. Those ideas will come back. What it is that, you know, the archetypes are changing. If you were around a bunch of, let's say, incredibly strong and intense people, that would brush off on you. Do you know? So the environments we choose, we in some sense adopt our qualities from. But it is also life force, you know? There's some people who have an incredible life force. They go and do multiple things, you know? And then they're, you know, fucking craftsmen. Joking. I don't know. What I'm trying to tell the viewers is that I have wondered, how am I masculine? How am I feminine? You know, when I realized the major archetypes are important to confront, you don't only need to confront the opposite of your archetype, you also need to confront your shadow, you need to confront your persona, and you need to confront your real self in Jungian thought, right? So our species actually, I predict this, it's going towards a multidimensional place. Pretty much the duality that we started from is not satisfactory multidimensionally. So what it means is that new dimensions, new behaviors, the human species has not succeeded because everybody tried to be the same. It succeeded because everybody had something new to add. And so when you think of it from that context, that rather than you are just like, you know, this like an archetype, or like a specific archetype, like you're this kind of person, that kind of person, this or that, you could just think of it this way, that you are a conscious being. Do you know? For me, I'll be honest, throughout the day, there's moments where I don't even think about what I am. I'm just living. The moment's just going forth. I'm not even thinking, am I male, am I female, am I this, am I that? It's just the action, right? But then there's certain moments where, of course, a person, especially for men, results are like, you know, like hammer blows to the chest sometimes. But it depends. I mean, we live on our own energy, you know, and what I've learned, and I'm learning still, is that we are in this world to learn to rely on our own force. But our own force is not ideological. And when we wander beyond ideology, what do we attribute power to? Some people use archetypes such as God, unified field theory, whatever you like to call it, right? For me, what it is it's unknown. Just like, you know how sometimes in situations you type something and it says unknown error. Somebody says, like the carpenter who saved the world. Guys, when I'm saying craftsmanship, the reason I'm saying that is craftsmanship is a concentrative act. So some actions, sure, you could go learn it quickly, do something with it, you go learn another skill, go do something with it. But there's some people who they are competing in the unique field. So for example, I don't know, I've dedicated my life to communicating. You know, I looked at the species history and I was like, okay, We have mouths, we have ears. The species, compared to the 4.5 billion years of the planet, like yesterday, acquired language, learned to write, and all of this. So it makes sense to me that if there was an entity in this world that has been expressing itself physically, it would get bored and it would go towards non-physical expression. But I feel that this is happening as a species. So I feel that I say I feel, what else can I say? Like, it's kind of like, what I'm trying to say is that you are given a force and you can choose to concentrate this, have single pointed concentration, they call it, or a sort of multifaceted, multi-angled perception on reality. This life is hilarious. The moment you take it seriously, you're trying to logically make it sense. When you take it playfully, you don't even take the variables of it seriously. There's been times where I've been super serious about the world and I'm like, this is fucking, like, what is this place? Where the fuck am I? Like, I've had those moments, but then there's been moments where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What if the purpose of life is not to be a known being, but to learn to also be an unknown being? So right now, the species, it's fighting over mental clothing. Okay, it's fighting over appearance and image. And sure, to the conservative mind, it's important, don't change. To the modern mind, liberal mind, they're like, yeah, we gotta change, And at the same time, we look at this world and we're like, what is this? Are they stretching a piece of gum? Like, or what was that thing called? Fruit roll-up or something? Like, you'd stretch that? It's like civilization is being stretched by people who don't want to change and people who've already changed. It's a tug of war, and most likely, the human species is one of those things that anytime there's a conflict and there's a loser, the species loses, Sometimes when I see, like, right now, what is it, the Ukraine-Russian war, I'm like, guys, if there were extraterrestrials and interstellar audiences in the clouds, we would be so freaking embarrassed as a species, right? Like, because we think we're alone, we think we have the freedom to do whatever we want. But what if there was intelligence in the room before we entered it? What if before the human species was living in the vacuum of space, there was something else? What if God is not an idea? Anyways, back to masculinity. I would say that I can't speak like I'm, my father attended, military service, my grandfather, all of these guys, like people back in the day, they attended that intensity. For me, my intensity, my military days were kind of like, kind of like being an eagle on the street, smoking without being caught, those days. Guys, I think, if this was like if life was a Skyrim video game, my stealth would be off the charts, like the stealth points. But anyways, so let me see where I can take this. The concept of masculinity can be approached from a different way. Let's approach it from a completely different approach and think of it this way, that we're an inventor of an android. And we've built an android and we're like, we want this android to behave masculine. We want this other android to behave feminine, right? And sure, we could get like a compilation, a collection of all male behaviors and female behaviors, and I don't know, somehow the android processes it. But if it didn't have access, and if we had to build masculinity and the masculine force and the feminine force, or the archetypes, from scratch, That means imagine suddenly everybody forgot what male and female meant, and we had to figure it out. I think inevitably it go back to how like men are physically bigger, you know? So that's kind of I think that's an interesting idea. If civilization reset and we forgot everything about masculinity and femininity, how would that whole thing suddenly resurface again? I think it would come back to the same point. So what it is even though people feel evolution kind of like goes up to a certain threshold and then it doesn't pass that and it fails and then it resets and the planet, just like I'm trying to give 10,000 talks, I give a talk every day, like the planet's like, man, how many civilizations do I have to practice? We're like, no way. Gaia is practicing civilizations, bringing rise and fall of civilization. But anyways, what I'm saying is if we had to do it, it would come to performance, and performance is based on passion, intensity, and ability. You know what's funny? I think if we had to reset the whole situation, it would be mixed. Do you know? Like back in the day, women would just be in the tribe. Women would not go hunt. Okay? But nowadays, I don't know what it was. I think it was like something on like Facebook or something. I saw this picture of this woman who was like Miss Olympia, and I was like, okay, you see, it's now the privilege of expression is way more than back in the day. So it makes sense that women want to experience behaviors that are masculine. Men want to experience behaviors that are feminine. Why? Because they're freaking taking turns on a theme park, right? But in reality, when you realize you aren't like this is, I haven't even gotten into mysticism. When you get into mysticism, you realize for the first time in your life that there is something watching how you are being an object and subject before you move. And we call that free will, but that's still a definition. What I would say is it's like they say consciousness is conditional. It's an attention that's conditional to something. You're conscious of something through something and whatnot, or as something. But when it comes to awareness, awareness is unconditional. And what I'm trying to tell the human species, and it's not just me, it's all the ancient mystics and yogis, is that there is a state of awareness. There is something you can notice about how you're being a being, that before you move, everything is being. And so many people go meditate, they go seek, enlightened gurus, they wash the feet of strangers, not realizing that what is within the guru is non-physical. The non-physical is space. Do you see what I'm like? I don't know how to say it. It's as if like some beings have realized they were the space before they were manifest in it, and some beings haven't. Those beings that haven't realized that, just like how do we know we're a mind? Because there's something noticing the body. Similarly, what is noticing the subject and object before they are claimed? That's very important. This is one of the biggest things. Who are we before we move? The yogis and mystics understood that in just stillness and silence, like if somebody thinks meditation means to have no thoughts, that instruction is like a later phase. The first phase of meditation is for you to be like, holy shit, I'm in an unknown world. I have no idea. I'm meeting myself for the first time. I'm living for the first time, getting to know myself for the first time, getting to know the world for the first time, getting to know people for the first time. And so it's as if, I don't know how to say it, but it's as if we're here to convert our sight into what else the world can be. I don't know how to say it, but it's as if we are not, like we may think that we're just this creature that came here and left, but the imprint, the geometrical imprint, it's remembered, it's kept. What it is, it's a server. It's a fucking... Somebody in the chat section, great guys, the chat section's alive. Somebody says space was neither created nor destroyable. It is ultimate paradox beyond the void. So I looked into this. I looked into what people think is space. I think there's a bunch of theories, but there were two that I came to an awareness of pretty much. Pretty much this is the view. You see, sure, you can choose to see space as an empty container and then forces and substances were thrown in it. That's one way. Another way you can see space is that there is no such thing as space. Space is the relation, is in some sense the interaction of force with matter. So in some sense, what we think is space, just space, I could put something in there, it's actually a force. But, I mean, they even say space moves faster than light, right? And I have no idea how they're philosophically, like, conceiving that, you know? Because space is one of the most bizarre things. It's one of the words in the English language that technically doesn't have a meaning. It's where the meanings are. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is that don't fear the changing of the times. Don't fear what you are. And when it comes to freedom of expression, I think a person has to be street smart now, you know? I mean, I'm not like a Navy SEAL. Like I could recommend the viewers here. I'll recommend some people who I think are good masculine archetypes. Jordan Peterson, Jocko. I don't know if I could Jocko W. I can't pronounce his last name. You know, people who have entered a field where there was fear and they surpassed the fear. Pretty much the human species celebrates surpassing stuff, right? We get to every new year we celebrate. What are we celebrating? The fictional the fictional turns in a vacuum. Like we are celebrating our own progress to ourselves, actually. This is the value of life, right? There has been moments where I felt I'm not me and I'm accessing the universal memory as the presence of the universe, not a personality. But then at the same time, the persona's here too. Anyways, what I'm trying to get to is that right now it's on the surface level. Right now, human beings are communicating, they are behaving. Give it a couple hundred years, it might become like cyberspace technology might become so much more alluring than physical reality, or we might become telepathic. You know, that's possible. Because right now, the only reason I'm giving these talks is because people don't know them. They're in my mind, or they're in my inner space, and they're not in the outer space. So I have to be like, oh man, in this lifetime, you know, it's like, when's telepathic technology gonna get developed, you know? 10,000 talks logos? Are you serious? I'm joking. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that novelty surpasses idealism. Okay? And you might be a person, I even heard this thing, guys, like there's so many fucked up stuff happening on, like, man, excuse my language, guys, I'm being too loose today. Too loose with my words. Here, I'll say it this way. On this planet, there's weird stuff happening. 100% people know there's messed up stuff going on, but something that's messed up is not just interaction of people with other people, but people with themselves, right? So there's, for example, suicide rates. I remember reading this article in Japan, one out of 3 men die alone in their homes. Like it's hikikomori or something, hikomori, something like that. So what it is that people were dependent on an environment on the, let's say you were a creature in a jungle, you didn't have to fill up the other roles. We didn't have to be like, okay, you behave like a male, you behave like a female, I'm going to do this, you do that. There was none of that. It was just nature. Everything was already set up. It was as if the soccer game was there, the players had to just play it. Now, when we stepped out of nature, we came and recreated the soccer game. Right? We recreated the game and now are wondering why our recreation of a system, of an ecosystem, is not as perfect as how we were when we were in the forest. You see, what has happened to mankind is that he has been disconnected from his natural body. So for some time, he cultivates the necessary technologies and at the same time cultivates dehumanized states of mind, and then it becomes fully grounded in the human. But at that point, the human archetype is not in the body, it's not in the physical realm. Oh man, I shouldn't say physical. It's as if like our body is going into our minds, right? But back in the day, it was like the minds were going into bodies. Okay, now bodies are going into minds. Like there's a shift here, right? Now we need to be responsible not just for how we're an object, which is physical survival. Like that was the alpha. The alpha was one who was physically responsible for its survival perfectly, based on its, let's say, lovely genetics and all of that, right? But nowadays, right, it's not physical strength people are cultivating. I think children are being conditioned to be responsible for being a subject more than an object. Do you understand what I'm saying, dear viewers? Children are learning how to be a subject way more than an object, right? I tested this out. Let me tell you how. I went to this family gathering. You know, Persian families are, they have family gatherings. And in this family gathering, there were generations of cousins, my older cousins, me, and then, children of my cousins and all of this, right? And I asked my cousin, did you climb trees as a kid? He said yes. I climbed trees as a kid. My youngest cousin has never climbed a tree, but he knows how to use every social media app. So what does this mean? This means that we have created a civilization where people are like, okay, I don't have to worry about physical survival because there's laws and regulations and I trust the civilized structure of the system. But because we're not in an advanced civilization, we're like, fuck, we're trusting the system, but at the same time, it's incomplete. It doesn't acknowledge the individual completely. An advanced civilization is a civilization that can't wait to get to know the human beings that that are part of it. But civilization 1.0, it's as if like, don't bother me, I'm busy. That's the kind of civilization it is. Anyways, there's some things beyond our control. There are some things in our control. When it comes to masculinity and femininity, the biological component wasn't in your control when you were born. Subjectively, nowadays, people are choosing to be in control. I mean, it's literally acting. When I saw actors and like Oscar-winning performances of actors, I was like, yo, there's freaking actors. There's human beings completely capable of behaving like a completely different human being rather than what their chronic or their natural condition is. So the human mind has a shape-shifting subjective ability. Now, this is kind of bizarre. Why? Because culture is not there yet. In the outer realms, things are dualistically divided. Male, female, light, dark. Do you see what I'm saying? Good, bad. Like the dualities are important in the outer realms. But in the inner realms, we have the privilege to step out of our duality. So that means... Sorry, guys. I wanted to say something. It was so silly. I wanted to say, in the outer realms, I'm like, I feel like a commander of mankind. But in the inner realms, it's as if I'm Cinderella missing my shoe. Sorry, guys. this is, my own humor. I totally understand if people don't understand, don't get my humor. But but what I'm trying to say is that even if you believe in God, you believe in truth, some sort of creation force, this is the idea. The idea is that we have been given a body that is in one dimension, but we have been given a consciousness, a mind, a mind that in some sense where was I going with this? Sorry guys, my attention drifted. I was looking at something. Where was I going? All right. Gotta open it up from another page. Gotta open the mind's book. For why else is it here? Guys, the logos, years ago, I wrote something for myself, kind of like, automated writing. And it was something where the logos was telling me, don't get attached to shapes. Like we had the ancient yogis renouncing all materialistic life, right? And now people are fighting over what sort of temporary subject are you going to be. I mean, technically, because we're mortal beings, we should prioritize freedom and freedom of expression. We should realize every human being lives the day once, and then the day finishes and the next day comes. And because it's like this, all of our days have value, and it's the intensity of work. The human species is going to see AI, pretty much technology is going to do all the physical stuff. We're going to be left with being creative and, in some sense, creative and emotional. Because let me tell you this thing about masculinity, it's important now because you're a biological being walking alone. But imagine in the future, everybody had an android walking beside them. Imagine you went to the store, paid $5 and bought an android bodyguard. And so when two people wanted to street fight in the future, it would be as if two androids would beat the shit, like break each other, like fight with each other on the street, instead of the two people actually fighting. So what I'm trying to say is that this is one of my fears. I shouldn't say fears, but one of those things which I kind of don't like, which I think technology may replace masculinity and femininity. It may not replace femininity, but it may replace masculinity. It may take away the how much value the human strength had. Because right now we're still living in a natural phase. Technology is not in our brains. It's outside. My laptop is on my knees. It's not like in my bicep, There is so much, emotional decision making that, sometimes I wonder, there's no way rationally we can survive only. The rational, like how many people on the planet try to calculate before valuing something. And I feel not a lot of people calculate. Mostly people are emotionally reacting. They hear something, the first idea that pops into their mind is the impression, right? It's like the thought. So the more emotional you are, the less perhaps the less sensitive you are being to how logically the moment is going forth. You see, sometimes I feel emotions are past events that were incomplete, and so they're kind of like triggered, right? I'll give you an example. Imagine you were a kid playing chess with your father, and you were about to beat your father in the chess game, and your father slams the chessboard, like breaks the chess game before the chess game finishes. Now imagine this kid grows up, has a son of his own, is playing chess with his kid, and then his kid is about to win him, and then he doesn't know why, but he slams the chessboard, right? As if one moment that made him feel inferior gave him a permission to replay it. And so this is what the species needs to practice, and these are the real men. These are the real alphas, I think. And see me as a fool, see me as whatever you like, you know. I feel I was born 400 years too soon, but that's my ego, and I'll keep going, you know. All right, guys, my laptop has 6%. Let's land the plane. So, what can I say? Masculinity, femininity, human beings, we entertain many types of archetypes, okay? And some archetypes are just second nature to us. We don't think about it because we've been raised in it. Just like, men are drawn to the color blue, women, girls are drawn to the color pink, for example. At least when I was being raised, that was kind of the thing, Girls played with Barbies, and we had these action man figures when I was like really young, So what it is our biology kind of predestines us for a sort of role and task in this world. I feel, this might be a bizarre thing to say, but I feel there is no such thing as beautiful or ugly people. I mean, there is externally, but I'm saying when it comes to nature, I think everything's made for something, for some action, right? And whether it's good or evil, but there's an intent. It's as if, like right now as I'm speaking, imagine there's 8 billion people on the planet. Now imagine there's a force brewing up in them, and this force hasn't been released. And it releases when the person trusts the world. So if you don't trust your world, you're going to start living internally. You're going to become an incredibly observant person, but externally you'll feel, as if the attention hasn't been there. As someone who's been pretty much, like I could say for like 8 years, like 8-9 years now, my mind has been moving faster than my body on a daily basis. When I say faster than my body, that means the amount of imagery I experience when I sit down to give these talks, the amount of imagery I see in my inner realms compared to the amount of imagery when I just go for a natural walk are different. And I think it's because of the intention. It's your intent. Do you know? And I think when it comes to masculinity and femininity, it's your intent. Like you could be somebody drew this picture. It was such a magnificent picture. It was a caricature. And what it was it was showing one side of the picture. You're seeing this guy who looks evil and like a savage, and his hands are behind like a chair, as if like his hands are tied up. And then you see this pretty beautiful girl, and both the guy who looks like a convict has his hands behind him, and the cute young girl has her hands behind him. But the artist on the other part of the photo shows that behind the guy who looked like a convict, he's holding a bouquet of flowers, and the cute girl, the beautiful girl, is holding a knife behind her. And it's this suggestion that even though we say, okay, you're a woman, you're a man, it doesn't mean their behaviors are still feminine and masculine. Do you see what I mean? It's a sort of speed and intensity. It's as if a part of our species has been designed for more intense actions, and a part of our other species is for more specific actions. Do you see? For example, who was it? Like there was this thing about evolution. They were saying like hunter-gatherer tribes. I forgot. Battery percentage 4%. Okay. Anyways, you're here to see how great of a human being you can be. The rest is the details. Whoever you are, male, female, whatever game you're playing with subjects and objects, The most important thing is human decency. If human decency, all issues is, I could tell you this, when human beings value anything else more than human beings suffer. But when we value humanhood, right? Like, because human behavior, before we could define it, it was an event, right? Like, I was being human before I knew my name, before I knew what I was. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like the human experience is there non-ideologically, and then the ideological conditioning kind of like, sculpts it. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. Let me see masculinity quotes. Let me see if I can read a bunch of quotes. Oh man, 4%, 30 quotes. Edwin Lewis Cole, being a male is a matter of birth, being a man is a matter of choice. Albert Einstein, try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. Douglas Wilson, if boys don't learn, men won't know. David Gilmour, manhood is the defeat of childhood narcissism. Edmund Burke, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Jack Donovan, strength, courage, mastery, and honor are the alpha virtues of men all over the world. And it's not just alpha virtues of men, it's the virtue of the hero. When a mother, like when you see, if you look at Animal Planet and you see the lioness protecting its young, like when an animal attacks the child of another animal, that animal goes, literally, it becomes a beast. You see, because it's in interference. That's what our species knows. Like, wolves would piss out their territory. Human beings didn't piss out their territory? We would probably build walls and shit, right? So we were in that. Sorry guys, I'm speaking really street-like today. It's like the cadence has turned to a revolt. But anyways. The quotes. James Freeman Clarke, manliness means perfect manhood, as womanliness implies perfect womanhood. Manliness is the character of a man as he ought to be, as he was meant to be. I think James Freeman Clarke is religious, because in the religious connotation, there's a specific, it's detailed out the role of man. And in Islamic traditions, it's very different. It's, I don't know what the term is, but you could have multiple wives and still maintain the healthy relationship. John Wayne says, a man's got to have a code, a creed to live by, no matter his job. Edwin Lewis Cole. Did I read this? Men and women have strengths that complement each other. Oh yeah, yeah. A man is one whose body has been trained to be the ready servant of his mind, whose passions are trained to be the servants of his will, who enjoys the beautiful, loves truth, hates wrong, loves to do good, and respects others as himself. Respect is missing. All the red pill, male, female stuff is, I think it's an absence of respect for being. For positions of being. Anyways, where was I? Frederick William Robertson says, hurry up, your laptop has 2%. Frederick William Robertson says, it is not the situation which makes the man, but the man who makes the situation. Elizabeth Elliot, stand true to your calling to be a man. Real women will always be relieved and grateful when men are willing to be men. Which is another way of saying women are the catalyst to amplify a man's potential. Because they are part of what makes you feel like a man, And of course, modern times, it's different. I'm speaking, I'm a 91 kid, Camille